Okay, let's see here. Alrighty. 3, 2, 1. Let's do this thing. Hey there, everybody. Coach Mark here. So, if I do get any live chats while I'm going, I will read them out for you all. Otherwise, let's go ahead and dive into what I got going on. And if it looks like I'm looking off screen, I'm probably looking at my phone because I also have this on my phone so I can see the chat going because I'm not that good at using OBS yet, so I don't know how to get the chat docket in there. But anyways, what I've got for you today is I had someone send me their program and they wanted me to give it a once over. So that is a service I offer, is programming consultations, just kind of look over what you've got going on, right? So let's talk about what we have here and sort of my impressions and how I'd rewrite it. So day one is their squat day. So they start with some heavy back squats, move into above the knee rack pulls, a 6-inch step up, sets of 15 to 20. Based off of that rep count, I am assuming that is per leg rather than total reps, because sets of 15, you can't do that unless you're doing 8 and then 7 on the other leg. Calf raises. Day two, we have our overhead day, so OHP, which I'm assuming is going to be a standing strict press, and then a push press variation, close grip bench, dumbbell tricep extensions, front and lateral raises, and then tire flips. Day three, we're doing lower body again. This is a hinge focus day, starting with some RDLs, back extensions, front squats, kettlebell swings, and calf raises. Day four is an upper body push-pull day, so we're starting with pendlay rows, incline bench, pull-ups, then a superset of skull crushers and cross-body hammer curls, and then box jumps. And then our last day is sort of an event day. It's a moving day where they'll start with Zercher marches. Then it's a hand-over-hand seated sled pull, a front-load log carry, curls, and then a sled push for speed. Now, the front-load log carry, I'm assuming that's going to be held in the rack position. So right off the bat, as we look at this program, there's definitely some things that I would change out. Exercise selection, let's start there, is actually pretty good overall. There's a lot of movements that simply make sense. You know, front squats are an amazing strongman exercise. Rack pulls have their place. I'd rather see a block pull, but I'm assuming it's an equipment issue, so that's why we're doing rack pulls. Just try to avoid rack pulls if you can. They're really hard on the bars. Back squats are good. I mean, again, good movement selection overall, so I don't have too many qualms with that. Now, in terms of loading, this is where we can definitely see some areas that can be improved upon. Now, as far as the back squat, overhead press, and RDL go, we're using percentages in this program, it looks like. I only had a couple weeks of the program itself, but it's pretty basic linear progression. But that said, I'd probably make some adjustments, not the least of which is something I really don't like seeing is the box jumps for time. Reason why is it misses the plot of a box jump, in my opinion, when it comes to programming for the strongman athlete. We use the box jump to help cue explosive triple extension, much like an Olympic pull or other plyometric type exercises. And when you move it to strictly being a for-time exercise, it becomes more of a conditioning type movement. So this is more what you'd see in, say, CrossFit type programming. So I'm really not a fan of it there. So that'd be one big red flag in terms of what I'd fix. So we're going to go ahead and just put that note here. So would change to something like 3x5. Just a more, shall we say, common sense way of programming it. Additionally, I don't like the tire flip here on pressing day. To me, this doesn't make much sense. Overall, if we look at how the program is structured, there's just too much, in my honest opinion. But I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Let's talk a bit more about the actual loading itself. Set rep schemes are pretty appropriate across the board. I did not like the box jumps. I'd also probably bring volume down a little on some of these accessory movements. So we're going to put in bring volume down slightly. You know, something like sets of 20 on step-ups. Again, if we're doing that per leg, you're now moving into more of an endurance base, and if we want to use the step-up in strongman application, there is a case to be made for higher reps. But even then, if we look at some of the other exercise selections, such as having the RDLs, for example, and then a lot of incline pressing, this leads me to believe this is an off-season program, in which case we're probably looking to build muscle mass, improve conditioning, do a bit of everything. But the downside to that is this program is trying to do too much of everything at once. So we'll bring volume down slightly. We're going to go ahead and just make some adjustments across the board in terms of loading. In that, rather than just having 5 sets of 4 at RPE7, I'd probably want to use some sort of wave approach. And I'd probably, we're going to go ahead and make this a conjugate program. Just because, frankly, conjugate rules. 5-day program is definitely going to be a no-go. We are switching this to a 4-day program just to help control volume overall. I think there's a lot of excess stuff in this program. There's just too much in it across the board. To me, this is not a very survivable program if you are going to be pushing load with an appreciable amount. Oh, hey, Chris. Thanks for joining me here on the live. So what I'm doing is a rewrite of the program you see on screen right now. Yeah. But then let's go ahead and kind of piece through the days and talk about some of the changes that I want to make. Right from the get-go, day 1, the squat, we're going to make the loading set rep scheme on the single leg work a lot more tame. There we go. Sorry, still getting used to this setup here. All right, come on, let me get the whole table here. There we go. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead here. We want to make loading protocols a lot more tame. I want to pick more appropriate set rep schemes, and I want the week overall just to make more sense, because to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense across the week with how things are structured right now. Like I said, I do not like the 5-day structure. I do not like how much event work there is. I think there's just too much of kind of more, how to phrase this? There's just too much in certain respects, but then in other areas, we're not seeing enough stuff that I think would really help move the needle for our athlete. And again, I am going to be treating this as an off-season overall developmental program. So what I mean by that is we're going to be focusing on a bit of everything. We want to get stronger. We want to get better conditioned. We want to add muscle mass. This is really where most of us live, right? So day 1 will be lower max efforts. Day 2 is going to become upper max effort. Day 3 will be lower developmental. And then day 4, we will make upper developmental. And we will keep it a somewhat push-pull oriented developmental day. I actually do like that setup right there. And that's something I'm even doing in my own programming right now, is kind of having the upper developmental day be speed, upper push-pull with some pump work as well. And I think our lifter here would benefit quite nicely from that approach. Now, I do want to make sure that, okay, my chat filter is correct there on the YouTube side of things. All right, so let's go ahead here. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a squat variation. And it could be, SSB squat. It could be a front squat. It could be a high bar squat. It could be a pause squat. But looking at what they were trying to accomplish here in this program, I think a front pause squat would be a really good option here. So what we'll do is front pause squat to 3, 2, 1 RM. Then we're going to drop 20% and do 2 sets of 3 to 5 relevant to the RM. So if they hit a heavy triple, they'll do 5s on the back off. If they hit a heavy double, they'll do 4s on the back off, etc., etc. So we'll do that, and you can rotate that. There's so many different variations our lifter could use. Then after the squat, we're going to go ahead and above the knee rack pull coupled with RDLs. This tells me they're probably pretty strong off of the floor, or maybe they're just selecting these variations for whatever reason. But let's go ahead and pretend that our lifter is incredibly strong off the floor, and maybe they're a little weaker in the mid-shin range. What we would do in this case is I wouldn't have them do speed deads and heavy rack pulls in the same week. Instead, what I might do here is after their front pause squats is do a good morning variation and something like a heavy set of 5 to 8 and then 2 sets of 10 to 12 thereafter. Pretty basic operation there. And then we can go ahead and for their lower developmental day, let's have them do a block pull. And we're going to go ahead and also make this a snatch grip block pull, because the reason we're going to do that is that'll have transference to something like the tire flip. It's going to help build their upper back quite a bit. It'll help them dial in their hip height for better starts on their deadlift long term. Using straps is fine, especially with a snatch grip. It's actually pretty much necessary. And we're going to use a basic step load here where they might go 5x5, 6x4, 8x3, and then probably something like 5 doubles. That way we take a bit of a volume deload in week 4. And then with the front pause squat, we might do something where week 4, they do 3x3 at 80% of week 3's load. Something I've been adding in a little more lately in my programming is 4-week waves, and having the 4th week be a bit of a volume deload in terms of the main movements, but still pushing on the accessories. I find it's been a good way to kind of help people recover intra-wave, because intra-wave is within the wave, before moving into a new exercise. Let's see here. I was just watching out some of these movements and how that can affect your training split recovery. So this is great timing since it's from... Oh, thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah. Alex Leonidas, used to be Alpha Destiny. Really nice guy. I love his content. I'd love to collab with him one of these days. Maybe someday. But anyways, as we go back to what I was discussing, snatch grip, block pulls. All right, cool. So then our step up single leg work here, we're just going to go ahead and we are going to swap this out in terms of the loading. 2 to 3 hard sets is plenty, and it doesn't have to be that many reps. So let's just say step up, now 2 sets of 8 to 12 each side. Really simple operation there. Let's see here. Now, leg extensions. I'm assuming this person has access to a sled based off of their programming. So we're actually going to swap that out for reverse sled drag. And we're going to do an 8 by 80 feet with 30 seconds rest, 25 seconds rest, 20 seconds rest, and then 15 seconds rest in week 4. I think that'd be a really good way of attacking those legs. And I kind of treat the sled drag as the strongman's knee extension. Good exercise overall. Now, calf raises, we'll just kind of leave those where they're at, but something I would like to add too, now that I'm looking at this, is before they do their max effort squat, we're going to do some hamstring isolation. That's just good for knee stability. And thinking about where they're programming everything, I suspect that a little more hamstring work should be beneficial for them. So we'll do hamstring curls or glute ham raises, just 3 sets. And say 10 to 12 rep if it's the hamstring curl, or maybe 5 to 8 GHR, just to get a little bit of a pump in the back of the leg and the knees. Good for the stability. That's a nice little trick from John Meadows that is definitely worth stealing. All right, that takes care of our lower max effort day. I might come back and play with it a bit more depending on what comes to mind as I play with the rest of the day. Now let's go upper max effort here. Now, it looks like they were strict pressing on their upper max effort day, which is definitely not a bad decision. Something I like to do with strongman athletes is when it comes to upper max effort is a strict press is a great option, but I'm honestly a really big fan of pushing incline pressing on this day. Reason being, it has a ton of transference to the strict press or the overhead press, right, in terms of leg drive, but also too, they just squatted the day before, so we're going to see some lower body fatigue present itself. So let's go with an incline press variation, like so. And then what we're going to do here is let's go ahead and have them work to a 5 to 8 RM, and then we're going to drop 20% for a rest pause set. So let's say they hit 200 pounds for a set of 5 on the 40-degree incline pause press, which I really like. We would then drop down to 160 and they do a rest pause set with it. Yeah, my math is right on that. And then even there, we might take another 10 to 20% drop, or you might even do, actually, let's just make it 2 rest pause sets for 2 rest pause sets. 2x RP sets. I love rest pause as an intensification method for the strongman athlete. It just has a lot of benefits overall. Now, after that, see here, what we're going to do is need to get some upper back work in here, even though it's one of those situations where we're going to do push-pull upper on day 4. I think they will benefit from integrating in some back work throughout the week. And also, if we look at what they did yesterday, because we're going to go 1, 2, day off, 3, 4 for our training days, just an assumed split. It's not always the case, right? I'd like to do some vertical pulling here just to help decompress the low back. It should feel nice. So let's go lat pull down. And we'll just do a couple rest. Let's go 5 RP. that's just 5, rest, pause. You rep it out, rest for 30 seconds, 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 rep it out. And that's it. You're just going to do that one set, and you want to think that you're getting somewhere around 8 to 12 reps on the first set, or 30 to 40 total reps. I like rest pause a lot for pulling work, especially on like machines, just because you can get it done with really quickly. Then after that, let's hit those triceps a little bit. Let's go close grip floor press. Preferably with a neutral grip. If we can use something like a Swiss bar, I think that'd be really nice. And on this, let's just think... let's use the 2RD10 method. So that is where you're going to take a fixed weight, you'll hit a set of 10 with it, rest, then you're going to take that same weight out for max quality reps. And if you get 12 or more, you're going to go heavier next time. And then after that second set, you'll drop 20% and go for max quality reps thereafter. 2RD is probably my most well-known programming protocol that I've used. I've reverse engineered it several times. That's a whole different video. But all right, so there we go. So then we got our floor press. I like that. Now, if we compare that to what we had going on originally this day, I get some more tricep work in there. Let's do some overhead triceps. And let's go with just 5 RP again. We're going to keep this pretty simple in terms of programming. I don't want to overly complicate what I'm picking in terms of progressions and whatnot. Let's see here. Let's get some upper back work. Let's do face pulls, 5 RP. And then we will do some IYT for shoulder stability raises, for shoulder stability. So IYT raise, that's a prone IYT, right? So you're face down on something like a 30 to 40 degree incline bench. You go I, Y, and then 2 T's. So 3 rounds of 10, 10, 20. That'd be pretty good. And let's see, how many exercises is that in the day? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 6 exercises. I like that. Maybe throw in some biceps. Let's go, actually, we're going to throw in, let's go banded curls and press downs, 100 reps each. There we go. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that ultra high rep band work is good for the tendons, plus you get a sick pump, so why not? All right. Now, lower developmental. We've already picked out what we're doing with the deadlift. We're going to use snatch grip block pulls, and then what I would do over time is I do that 3-week wave, then I would move into just snatch grip pulls off the floor or just regular block pulls. And then after that, I would do pulls from the floor thereafter. That's a nice kind of mechanical progression for the deadlift. And in the off season, which again is what I'm assuming this program is based off of, that gives our lifter the ability to recover nicely within the wave. And they can push their squat a little bit, which ostensibly is going to be a better overall mass builder. And again, we're thinking developmental for our lifter here, yeah? So then we'll do that. We'll go snatch grip block pull, mechanical progression, just to give myself a note here. So then after that, they have the back squats, or back extensions, front squats, kettlebell swings, and calf raises. So the kettlebell swings, I'm actually going to drop. I'm also, let me rephrase. Let me kind of go through everything here. So first off, the back extension. I love the back extension. I think it's a great exercise. I really don't like it being before a front squat, though. I think that doesn't make sense because we want the low back to be fresh going into the front squat. Because the front squat does have quite a bit of bodily loading, potential, we don't want to hamstring it by fatiguing the low back prematurely. But then what I'd also do here, truth be told, is I have them front pause squatting earlier in the week. So for their second squat variation, I would have a couple different choices based off of really how they recover and what their own preferences are. In a situation like this, I'd either go with an SSB Hatfield squat or a deadlift stance leg press, both of which are going to be really good for helping build leg strength and size, as well as power off the floor. But we'll go ahead and go with an SSB Hatfield squat. Reason being, because of how they programmed this, I'm not sure how much machine access they have or if they even like using machines. And the SSB Hatfield squat is pretty much the strongman's leg press if you're in a garage gym. I really like that variation. And what it will do here is rather than a kind of boring 5x5, let's make it a little spicy, and we're going to do one big set. And we're going to go anywhere between 12 to 20. And you're just going to add weight and progress linearly. This is going to be tough. It's going to be a bit of a gut check, but I actually like that. And the reason why is the block pull mechanical progression for developmental. We're probably never going to exceed 80% of their floor pull, so we can get away with adding in something like this, right? And then we factor in Fatigue after that, yeah. And even then, the fatigue's not going to be that bad because it is just one hard set at day's end. But if we do factor in the fatigue as well, we can probably get away with a little less volume overall. I'm going to drop those kettlebell swings. But we're thinking, okay, we were 2 exercises in. We've worked pretty gosh darn hard. Now, they had a back extension in there, which is a great hip hinging exercise, as is the kettlebell swing. And posterior chain strength and endurance is absolutely critical for the strongman athlete. But what I'm going to go ahead and do here is let's make this an SSB Zercher Good Morning. I'm really enjoying Zercher Good Mornings with a lot of my athletes. They have tremendous carryover to loading events, and it's going to help work the upper back. And if we look in their original programming, they did some Zercher marches. So they're not shy of Zercher positioning. And this one will do 3 challenging sets of 5 to 8 reps. You don't need to do a ton of reps on Zercher Good Mornings. And then after that, let's go ahead, add in some planks, some side planks, just some basic core work right there. 3 to 4 rounds. Yeah, 3 to 4, yeah. Oops, 3 to 4 rounds. And, anywhere between 30 to 90 seconds, just depends on what we're picking. Nothing overly complicated, though, yeah? All right, I like that. Looks good. And last but not least, let's see if there's anything else I want to integrate in. No, I think that looks pretty good overall. Now let's go ahead and talk about our upper developmental push-pull day here. I like push-pull for upper body. It's a great programming modality. But like I said, there's quite a few things I think we can do to extract more benefit for our lifter. So let's go ahead and with this, with our upper developmental day, I like to treat these days as not only speed work, but also skill development. So what we're going to do is let's go with a log push press here, just because that's a really good kind of year-round event you can train as a strongman athlete. It doesn't beat you up too bad, and it has tremendous carryover to everything else. If you get better at the log, your axle usually comes along for the ride, and it'll help out your circus dumbbell to some point. Whereas a circus dumbbell, being the selfish piece of crap that it is, it doesn't really help anything else. It just sucks. So that's why we don't train it year-round. You got to think that in the off season, we want to focus on opportunity cost. Sure, we could improve technique and skill with the circus dumbbell, but what will it do for our long-term development versus simply getting bigger and stronger and doing something like the log, which is more of a more key event, right? Now with the log push press, what I'd do here is probably a triphasic approach. Reason being, I just like triphasic a lot for general development for the athlete. So what that means is we'll spend 3 weeks doing slow eccentrics in the dip drive for the push press. Then we'll spend 3 weeks doing pauses at the bottom for the push press. And then in the final 3 weeks, we might do reactive reps where they dip, drive, and then try to catch it and go straight into the next one, kind of chaining the reps together. And let's go ahead and contrast set this with box jumps. That way, what we're doing is we're cueing that explosive triple extension, right? And then it'll just help them think to be more aggressive with their push press on the log. So that way they're still getting box jumps in, but they're actually going to have a lot more transference in terms of developing the attributes we want. The box jump should not be used as a conditioning exercise for the strongman athlete. You don't need a lot of reps to reap benefit from it. And by putting it in with the push press, we still keep that violent concentric at all times, because even if you are doing a slow eccentric on your push press dip drive, you should very much focus on a violent concentric phase. So the box jump will help with that. And actually, we'll go ahead and do the box jumps before the push press, now that I'm thinking out loud here. So box jump to log push press. All right, there we go. Then after that, we could actually even go ahead and superset that with pull-ups. So then we can kind of make it flow state programming, which I actually think would be really nice too. If you're just kind of right there on top of the log the whole time, it's easy to sort of adrenaline dump. You hyperfixate on it. You get sucked up and you're always constantly thinking ultra ego rather than ultra instinct. Being a little more relaxed is highly beneficial, especially in the off season, right? When we constantly rely on adrenaline and mental intensity with our workouts, what that can do for us is it means every single rep is going to go ahead and generate more fatigue, right? So this is a good way of balancing that out. So we can just do our jump, we do our log, we knock out some pull-ups, more upper back work is never a bad thing. Then after that, let's go ahead You know what? We'll do some axle strict press after our log push press. Strict pressing is always a good idea. You don't need to do a ton of it, but what we're going to do here is we're going to do that as a seated bump. Now let's go seated behind the neck. Even better, because that'll be good for shoulder mobility, and I just find this is one of those great overall developers, and especially after this week of training, you're not going to beat up the low back so bad by sitting down because you can't really hyperextend, you can't lay back too much on a seated unsupported overhead press like the BTN press. And with that, let's keep it really simple. We'll do 2 RD8. I like slightly lower reps on strict press versus like a horizontal press. Then we'll do a chest supported row of choice. We'll go 2 RD8 right there. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Now, let's see here. Compared to what they had going on earlier. Yeah, hand over hand sled pulls, front log load carry, sled push for speed. Then after that, we could just move into some general arm work and shoulder stability work. We could do some Lou raises. Let's just go 8x8 on that. Keep it simple. Then we'll do some, see what I'm doing, overhead triceps. Let's do some press downs. I'll do a rest pause set there. And overall, I like this. It makes a lot of sense to me. It's a pretty basic program, which is honestly what you want in the off season. The general, when you make things more complicated in your training, all you're doing is introducing extra variables that will cause it to go wrong. And this is much more sustainable long term versus what we had initially here. There's just so much, to me, this is just, this day 5, I don't like how many events we're training, especially when we are in the off season, right? There's no need to. We want to focus on building a bigger, stronger, more well-rounded, overall more developed athlete. And I think this variation, this rewrite of the program gives us that. Yeah, man, that's really all I've got. So if there's any questions out there, please let me know, folks. I'd love to answer your questions. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up here. I'll give you all a minute or two to pick my brain, and I'll kind of look over this and see if there's anything else I might want to play with as well. Oh yeah, also worth mentioning, you can always change the order of these days. If you want to start with developmental days, you want to start with upper body days, that's not a problem at all. This is just sort of default settings. That's kind of how I go about it, right? All right, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so doesn't look like there are any questions from the crowd there. Oh, wait. Question about face pulls. Isn't it difficult to get heavy enough to do? Yes, it definitely can be heavy enough to do face pulls, heavy enough for efficient rest pause. So one thing I've really liked doing is doing them Sam Sulek style, where you lay on the ground. So you just lay on your back and do them while laying on the floor. Otherwise, something I'll do is I'll drag an incline bench over and just have my chest against it. And honestly, it's one of those things where with face pulls, a little body English is not the enemy. Remember, with strongman, this sort of work here, it doesn't have to be as strict as a bodybuilder. We actually want a little bit of intensity and acceleration. We want our body to be able to both generate and absorb the forces involved. I'm not saying turn everything into a kipping exercise. Let's not lose the plot. But kind of like how you can do barbell rows bodybuilder style, where it's ultra strict with no leg drive, or you can do them heavy and cheaty with English. It's one of those things where a little technique variation isn't the end of the world. We want to think about what is the goal of the exercise, and does the technique modification we use, such as a little body English, defeat the purpose of it? You know, I have one athlete with barbell rows. I'm just going to use barbell rows because I think it's such a great one. I told him to use body English, which is great. Body English on a barbell row is what's going to help you chase overload with it. It's highly beneficial. But what happened is he was doing so much English, you could see that he was just chest bumping the bar over and over. He was no longer focusing on driving his elbows back, getting the scapula back, working the lats. In addition to that, he was starting to bounce the plates off the floor. So at that point, what happened is the technique change became so egregious that we lost the plot of the exercise. Whereas if you're using just a little bit of English to get it moving, but then you're getting the elbows all the way back, That's highly beneficial for the application of a strongman athlete because a little power generation is going to help you. In much the same way that when you bench press, there's generally a little bit of leg drive, which is not a bad thing, right? It's always something I found kind of funny is people will lose their minds over leg drive on the bent over barbell row, but they're fine with leg drive on a bench press. And fun fact, there was a study, I think it was by Ligma Johnson et al., that said if you get upset about leg drive on a barbell row but don't care about leg drive on a bench press, it has a near perfect correlation with never benching 3 plates. Well, this has been the longest live I've done in a minute. Kind of fun, though. Do we have any other questions, folks? Because I'm having fun if you are. Hey, absolutely, Chris. That was a really good question, honestly. And of course, you could always swap the face pulls out for something else. IYT raises rear delt crossovers, etc., etc. It's one of those things where I'm just kind of spitballing ideas. This was ultimately just a live rewrite. You could do something 8x8s are really good. After a certain point, I do think the introduction of power into movements is not a bad thing. Well, cool. So I think that wraps it up. So everyone, appreciate you being here, watching me talk to my webcam. I think the new light really helped. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. For those of you who are watching who have not hired me, just know the odds are good. I'd love to work with you. But I will catch you all at a later time. And tomorrow I've got a really fun YouTube video where I'm going to be talking about the evolution of strongman training. But folks, you take care. Have a great rest of your day.